Hello, I'm Joe Bricko, VP of Sales and Marketing here at Range Systems. I've been with Range Systems for 13 years, and over the course of my 13 years here at Range Systems, I've been involved with in-home or private ranges for all of those 13 years. It's a segment that I really enjoy working with because my background is in custom home construction and being a commercial general contractor. What Brad and I are going to do is lay out a four-step process for how to successfully build an in-home or private range.
I'm Brad Knopf. I'm in commercial and residential range sales here at Range Systems. I've been with Range Systems about 7 years. My background is also in construction. It's commercial construction primarily. So like Joe, I've helped design and develop many different types of projects in construction over the years, and I lend that experience here, the home range process.
Yeah, so a common phone call or email we get from a customer is, hey Brad, Joe, where do I get started?
Absolutely.
So that's really the point of this series. We really want to lay out a simple four-step process, so we're going to jump into that now.
Yeah, what we'd like to talk about today are how to really begin one of these projects. And it really starts with identifying the space or the area in your home or an outbuilding or some type of structure that you want to have the range inside.
Yep, as Brad mentioned, that would be step one. It's really identifying where do you want this range. And usually in this step, Brad and I are talking with the homeowner at this point. The homeowner needs to, or the end user, needs to give us some input on where they want that range. Now, there's a number of places that we can do this. It's real common to see this in a lower level or subgrade of a home. In this case, we can use one of the concrete foundation walls. Yeah. Another common approach is to put this in an outbuilding or a shop. This would be more of a box-in-a-box type of concept, which we'll get into later. But back to step one, this is step one, is really getting an understanding of where the user or homeowner would like to see this range.
Yeah, and it's important to understand that indoor range can be as small as 5 feet wide by 30 feet long if you're doing just strictly pistol shooting, or it can be 4 lanes wide, which is about 16 feet by 100 feet long if you want to do more rifle shooting. It really depends on the space you have available to build the range in.
So within this step, one of the first things that Brad and I are looking at, and one of the big limiting factors, is going to be ceiling height. We're also going to talk during this step about what your desired overall target distance is. So the reason that ceiling heights are important is because depending on the type of ceiling structure that you have, you need enough height for us to provide overhead protections in the form of a vertical bridging baffle, a suspended baffle, or our preferred way to build it is within a concrete box, and then we'd have a light guard for that. So if you're building a concrete box type of range shell, we need a minimum of 9 foot. If you aren't able to have a concrete ceiling on this range and you have to go to a different type of baffle system that we provide, either a vertical bridging baffle or a suspended baffle, we're going to need a minimum of 11 foot of ceiling height.
Yeah, and I'm going to dovetail on what Joe just mentioned. In range construction, whether it's commercial or indoor ranges, concrete. Absolutely your best friend, pound for pound, price per foot. There is no better method to build a range. So clearly the 4 walls on the rectangular box need to be concrete with a door on one end for access. But as Joe indicated, if you can design into your process early enough and have precast concrete planks over the top of those sidewalls, you're going to have the safest, cleanest, quietest range out there.
Definitely, and that's why we always push for concrete. You can end up with a lower ceiling height because concrete is creating the ballistic protection overhead. If we don't have a concrete ceiling, we have to use our baffle system, which is constructed of AR500 steel faced with our ballistic rubber DuraPanel. And to do that, we need more ceiling height. So this is really where step one starts, and we can, again, work with the end user on this and on identifying that area. And then once we do that, then we'd move on to step two.
Yeah, and it goes without saying, but building indoor range on any of your property is a serious business. So you really do need to consult with professionals, ourselves, architects, builders, sometimes structural engineers. Very important that you take in mind all of the components of this project.
Yep, which brings us into step 2. So we've already identified where the homeowner would like to have that range space. We've provided some input on being able to work within the foundations of that. Now in step 2, we need to engage with an architect. This is where an architect is going to look at that identified space, and then they're going to start to create designs and plans around that. And that's where it all really starts for us.
Yep.
Because what Range Systems really does is we are going to customize a ballistic equipment package that's going to fit within that space, that is designed by an architect and is constructed by the general contractor or homeowner. So our starting point is dimensions of that box. Again, ideally it has a concrete ceiling. Doesn't necessarily have to. We have some different solutions for creating ceiling protections, but what we really need is we need that length, width, and ceiling height to give us a starting point so that we can start designing and customizing that equipment package for that space.
Yeah, and in that process, it's all important is, again, collaborating with your architect or builder. All of the concerns that will be taken into account at that point will include ventilation, electrical, those things that we aren't necessarily responsible for in our scope, but we will help provide guidance and direction on. It's really important that out of that second step in the process, when you are engaged with an architect, that we start to create the basis of design of the range. The size and dimensions, as Joe mentioned, lead directly to how we properly design and equip the ballistic protection inside the range and ultimately help you budget for it.
Yeah, another important part of step 2, we oftentimes will get a call from a homeowner and say, how much for an in-home range? And it's really a difficult question to answer because it really doesn't come till after step 2 that we're effectively able to do that, because all of our pricing is generated on square footage and linear footage. So if we don't know or understand the space that we're going to design this equipment package for, we really can't give a whole lot of prices other than a wide range of pricing.
Yeah, great point, Joe. And again, the construction method has as much to do with it as the type of shooting that you want to do inside the range. We'll help you determine that and the ballistic needs that'll be appropriate for the type of shooting. But we go back to, again, how big is the box? How is it made? What are the dimensions? And then we can really start to define it.
So the completion of step 2, moving into step 3, would include having a design that we can look at. Normally, a two-dimensional blueprint comes from an architect. It lays out the length, width, and height of that range space, along with what the construction of those walls are going to be. So a minimum of 8-inch core-filled concrete, 6-inch poured concrete, and then the various type of sealing methods that can be on there, concrete being preferred. So now that we have a plan in place and we have those dimensions, that's when we move into step 3.
Yep. Yeah, that's defining the equipment. And it's funny, but many times we'll have customers because they're very excited about shooting in the range and what they can do with the range, and that's great. We share that passion. We're very excited about it ourselves, but we really need to get to that first two steps done. Now we can start to talk about the differences between our encapsulator block trap or our encapsulator grand trap, which is a much higher volume type of a piece of equipment. Depending upon how much you shoot, how you shoot, where you like to train, one or both of those are your better options. We'll help you go through that process. Same thing with target retrieval systems. We've got a good, better, best system. We can take it from a very basic toggle switch activated up to a full 360-degree turning and light system with advanced features like law enforcement training. So there are many options that we can consider once we have those first two steps completed.
Yeah, so as mentioned earlier, once we have that plan in place, this is the point where we can start helping with budgets, because now we're starting to make range equipment selections because we know or have identified that space that we need to build within. Yep. Now, in in-home range, they can vary widely. So if you have a complete concrete box, it could be something as simple as just a bullet trap.
Yep.
I mean, you're a little bit limited, but if
Yep.
you really just want to be able to do a little bit of shooting in your home, have a really safe bullet trap to shoot into, it can be something as basic as that.
Absolutely.
Now on the other end of the spectrum, it can be something as great as a commercial range.
Yeah.
Now you're dealing with bullet traps, you have light guards or baffle systems, you would have a safety ceiling, you can add tactical sidewalls
Yep.
if you want to do some
For very
downrange
advanced training.
engage and do some close quarter combat. You can add the different options of target retrieval systems, as Brad mentioned. We have a good, better, best. Our high-end systems will have some program scenarios, so you can do some decision-making type of training. We have a good, better, and best lane divider. We find that if you have multiple shooting positions, they're more apt to get used. They're more enjoyable.
Yeah.
The same thing goes for target retrieval systems. When we circle back with our customers, we find the ones that add overhead target retrieval systems where you can physically pull the target in, or add some of them higher features like turning.
Yep.
They're more apt to get used. So we have a really wide variety of deliveries. Something as simple as a bullet trap and maybe some light guards, you could probably get someone in, depending on the space, for $25,000 to $40,000.
Yeah, for a very basic setup, as long as structural walls around are sound, you're right, Joe. Yeah.
And then on the high end, which we have another video, a featured range video on this, is a really premier range.
top tier, yeah.
That we have done recently. And that's basically a commercial range in a
Yeah.
home. You have
Absolutely.
3 shooting positions, so you have multiple lane dividers. That customer selected our highest end target retrieval system. So he has turning and edging and program features within there. We have complete acoustic ballistic protections all the way down
Full
range.
coverage, yeah. And they also went with a very custom high-end look at the front end of the range. The lane dividers match some of the other wood finishes in that area, so it looked very cohesive. But yeah, there's no limit to the design on the high end. We can really take it upscale with you no matter what you're looking to achieve.
And in that case, I mean, you could be looking at 150,000,
Correct.
plus, depending on how many features and different, really, bells and whistles that you
Yeah.
want to add to your range.
Right.
So the sky is really the limit. We have a wide variety, and what we're going to do, Brad and I and team, is work with you on what you're trying to accomplish. If you just want to do some basic training in that range, we can set you up for that. If you want a really high-end showpiece with a lot of advanced features in there, we can work with you on that to get you a very high-end premier in-home shooting range. So step 3 is equipment selection. Brad and I will work through equipment selection with you based on your budget. From there, we move into step 4.
Yeah, and step 4 really is kind of at the end of the process. It's very important, but many of our customers ask, hey, how do I get this installation handled? How does the equipment go in? And the answer is it depends on what you do and kind of your background. On a very basic level, as Joe mentioned, with just a simple block trap, that might be something that many of our customers do on their own. When it becomes more involved and there's many of the moving targets, that type of thing, then there's some technical expertise, clearly. So we can do a tech support type installation service where we have one of our trained technicians on site during the kickoff of the project to help guide and supervise. And of course, all the way through a full installation process where we have our team on site, they unload the truck, they assemble every nut and bolt according to our design spec.
So that was our 4 steps to building a successful in-home range or private range. Again, this is our fastest growing segment here at Range Systems. As mentioned, one that Brad and I are real passionate about. I love working in this segment.
Yeah, it's really important that you kind of follow the steps as Joe and I laid out today. Jumping around, moving, between them certainly is okay, but you're going to have a more productive and successful project if you follow those basic steps in that sequence. And really what's important about this is that we help you in many cases answer questions, but you'll have some questions of your own with your builder, architects, whoever it is, but they have to be nailed down in the early stages to make it successful and to make a safe, clean, and quiet range that's cost effective for you.
So in addition to these 4 steps that Brad and I laid out here today, we have a lot of resources on our website. We also have a YouTube channel that'll show you all the different equipment pieces that we have, along with some featured ranges. We do have featured in-home ranges, so you can get views of what those might look like. And our website is www.range-systems.com. And then on YouTube, Range Systems.
Yep, we're here to help you take that home range concept into reality. It just takes some steps, and we're here to help you guide that process. So thank you.
Thank you for listening.